Hey everybody, Neon here doing another analysis video. This time it is constructed. I picked up a game between StrifeCro and Impact. They were playing a blue-green mid-range kind of deck versus a red-blue Aggro Econ deck. And I was just watching it, and I thought it would be interesting to talk about it because I haven't really talked about very much constructed stuff yet in terms of doing the analysis. So I wanted to start doing a little bit of that and kind of talking about deck archetypes and game plans that are built around that, because I think there's a lot of differences between draft and constructed. Before we get into the video, of course, I want to remind you about the game submission page. Is linked in the description, linked in the comments, and you can check that out in order to have a chance to win a $5 Steam gift card and get a game of your choice analyzed on the channel. And then in addition to that, also of course, comment, like, and share, and give me any feedback that you have. I would love to get better at this. There's a lot of different ways to do this kind of stuff. Like, do you want to see more constructed, do you want to see more draft, or whatever. So let's get into things. So, as I said, this is a StrifeCro versus Impact. Impact is also a Hearthstone personality, maybe not well as known as StrifeCro, but StrifeCro is pretty well known within the Hearthstone community. He's played a lot of other card games as well. I know that he was playing Eternal for a little while. I saw him doing that. But yeah, he is on a green-blue mid-rangey kind of deck. He described it as green-blue beatdown. I don't know how if that I would describe it that way, because I mean, also beatdown is kind of a ambiguous term in terms of what it really means in terms of a deck archetype. Beatdown is more something that you do rather than something that you are, in my terminology. But I mean, it makes sense to a certain degree. Now, so he is of course playing against the red-black Aggro Econ style deck. This is a very popular deck from what I've seen on the constructed ladder, or in the constructed games rather. These are of course just in solo games that they're just matching up against one another. It wasn't just a random pairing. But yeah, it's also off of StrifeCro's stream. I will have a link below to find that if you're interested in checking out the whole VOD. But yeah, so he also, like, one thing I'll note even right now that he's doing a lot over the course of this game, and that is that he really does look at all of the boards back and forth a lot, which I actually think is a good habit to do. I mean, you might not think that you need to look at all the boards all the time, but the way that the brain sort of works is that as long as you have the information in your head, you're kind of like processing it in various ways. Like, you might not necessarily have a question exactly that's about, like, okay, what's happening on lane 3, but by doing that kind of, constantly checking and saying, okay, what's going on, it'll help you to process and make your decisions better and not forget things like, using your items wrong or something like this. So this is a pretty obvious play, trying to line up a compel on the creep so that you can keep your Ogre Magi alive. It's also always nice to do this in the Ogre Magi lane, since you always get that multicast, or you have a chance to get those multicasts here. But yeah, so he got that, which is a nice start to the game. Now, his deck, as I said at the start, it is a green-blue mid-rangey type deck. By mid-range, I mean it's not like trying to break down your opponent's defenses immediately. It's trying to, like, play the game for a couple turns, but it does have a creature-oriented, unit-oriented perspective, and it's just trying to basically win off the back of some good cards and a little bit of pressure. And it also might not have just a ton of synergy in the deck, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just kind of leveraging that card quality is how I would generally describe it. And this is the first real interesting decision about where to put that Drow Ranger. There's a lot of reasons to always want to put it into the third lane, because it means that it can't die really until you actually have a chance to get some benefit off the aura. Right now, obviously, the positioning is such that she is guaranteed to land in front of the Phantom Assassin, and you already have a green hero in that lane as well, so not where you really want to have her. This is also, so I think that this positioning here makes a lot of sense. She is very likely to be in front of either the Mercenary Exiles or the creep there. I mean, maybe the Sorla Khan goes into that lane too. This actually seems pretty likely that the Sorla goes into that lane, as you already have a decent amount of pressure there. She could also go into the center lane too. So by putting her into the middle lane, you're saying, yeah, okay, trying to avoid the Sorla Khan, because I think that the Sorla is a little bit more likely to go into that top lane, given the fact that there's already some creeps there. Interesting that he's playing Ramesk Blessing in this deck, by the way. Now, he's often going to be doing this prey on the meek math, because this is a very impactful card. It's a very bursty card, as you have this potential to get a ton of value out of just one cast of it, depending on the structure of the lane. Oftentimes, you want to do that in the Kana lane, because Kana's ability synergizes with her car, which is, it's often the case. There's a lot of synergies between the cards and the signature cards and the actual hero cards of the various heroes. But what it does is that because you are adding a bunch of units to that one lane, it increases the chances that you're going to get a big prey on the weak when the game goes a little bit further on. Kana's also a great flop hero for blue because she has such a beefy stat line. Now, it is a little bit strange that you're going to be constantly pulling creeps into one lane, but this is also the kind of deck that can set up an 80 kill on the Ancient too, since you are going to be playing things like Mr. Avernus, you're going to be playing things like Dimensional Portal, and you obviously have the Drow Ranger in addition to that. I think that he also is playing some number of Emissary of the Quorum too, so it definitely has the ability to really push down one lane. So just the fact that Kana is pushing all your stuff into that one lane, not that big of a loss. That lane, though, is obviously not going spectacular. Now, there's no tools in the hand at the moment to keep the Ogre Magi alive, as you can see. So he's going to be dying one way or another. There's no Compel left in hand, for example. Not that you would want to, because I think that would kill your Drow Ranger, which is probably better in this instance than the Ogre. This just kind of do this, establish a little bit of pressure, hopefully set up a good player around the week later, and see if you've got that proc on the Ogre. Blessed Ogre. So good. When Ogre's good, man, it's so disgusting. He's really, really good. Yeah, we get the duel off on the Drow Ranger. That's always something you have to try and play around if you can. But it would have been possible to do something like the Ramesk Blessing here to just save the Drow Ranger, but that's not exactly exciting. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, you can do from here a Ramesk Blessing onto the center lane in order to buff that one up. But it's also, none of these lanes are going particularly well, which I think is when I was watching the deck, I didn't watch a ton of the games with it, but I wasn't, I'll admit that I wasn't impressed by the deck. It seems fine, like there's nothing wrong with it, but it's also not spectacular, because it really does rely on snowballing a given lane, and if your heroes die early, which can happen pretty easily, you kind of fall behind pretty rapidly, which I think is a dynamic that you're going to see a lot in Constructed, where it's just harder to come back because the card quality is so high, and the removal is much, much better too. So for instance, you fall behind in a lane, and so you try to play some heroes there, and then they're just able to constantly kill your shit, and you can't really rebuild afterwards. So I think that this is part of the reason why cards like Annihilation are so important, because it means that you can actually have a real effect on a lane, even when you're having trouble getting established in it. The card's obviously very, very good, so it's not like it's some genius take to say that Annihilation is good, but yeah, that's interesting to note here. Impact, of course, has made a ton of gold in this instance. He has been killing heroes left and right, racking up that sweet cash. 26 as of right now. These are some good moments to pay attention to the gold amounts too, since there are going to be a smaller range of different items that your opponents are likely going to be able to bring to the table. Like in draft, it's something that if you don't have access to your opponent's deck list, it's really hard to figure things out outside of some very specific numbers. Like 4 is one that it's very likely for. It could be a flask or something like this, but outside of that, you don't have that. But so in this instance, he spent 25 gold and got one item, And if you have been paying attention to Constructed and you know what these deck lists typically look like, that basically tells you with like 97% certainty, something in that nature, that he picked up a Horn of the Alpha. Which is, I mean, this is some of the important things that you have to pay attention to, is that knowing the costs and knowing the compositions, which is, it's just much more important in these matchups compared to in draft, where it just kind of could be a lot of different things, and it's harder to follow what's going on with your opponent's goal. And oftentimes, also, when your opponent is buying multiple items at once, it's basically impossible to figure out what it is. So, scanning the boards and trying to decide where to place some resources. We've got a lot of really scary stuff going on in multiple lanes here. Now, we are getting some decent amount of damage in with this Prey on the Week, so that was a pretty decent Prey on the Week, of course, that got through. But this LC has the potential to, like, hit this pretty hard. I mean, you don't even need to. You can just use the Bounty Hunter in order to take it down. There's a question, of course, of what StrifeCro can really do to get back into this lane. Like if we do a Prey on the Week, we're going to be doing it for 1, 2, 3, 4, I think, which is reasonable. I think that for Prey on the Week, from what I've seen so far, you really are looking for 4 or more off of it. You have to get it kind of better than Dimensional Portal, and in which case, like, 4 gives you 4 bodies, so you're at least, like, kind of on even footing, even though the bodies are smaller. But I think that this also emphasizes just how absolutely stupid Dimensional Portal is. When I first saw the card, I was kind of like, wow, is this just like a draft common kind of thing? Is this just like a random, like, quality card for that, or is this actually just constructed playable? And it turns out it was constructed playable too, and so you're going to see it a lot in a lot of decks. We, of course, get that Horn of the Alpha out as we were expecting. I mean, it's good to be able to figure out, like, what's going on with those, but there's just nothing that he could have done in order to fight back from that. We have the opportunity here to Gust to stop them from doing something like a Payday, but at this point it feels like you've already lost that battle. So I don't know if that's worth it. I mean, you do also have 2 Gusts in hand, so it feels like just using your cards is kind of nice sometimes. It's really difficult that it doesn't look like this particular deck has a lot of tools in green for really establishing very much pressure or, like, pushing your opponent out of lane. So he does end up Gusting here to try to shut off something like the Payday or, whatever it is that he might be trying to do. I think that the Payday is the biggest one, though. Do have the opportunity here to finally buy a Stonehall Cloak, which seems reasonable here, but I think that also the Fountain Flask gives you the opportunity to heal the Kana, and you can see that he's pointing that out. It's really important to keep her alive, but your heroes have just been dying all the time. This is not that uncommon for this kind of a deck, but it's also, like, not the end of the world even either. Like, this is the kind of deck that you can lose a lot of your early game, and then just set up kind of a wombo combo kind of thing. Like, this isn't a combo deck. Like, there's definitely a blue-green combo deck that is pretty popular and powerful. I mean, people really like it because it's a really fun and interesting deck too, but you're not going to be playing... The games do play out very differently, given the fact that you don't have quite the same amount of burst potential as them. But this does have a decent amount of burst potential still, so you don't have to just rely on comboing off in the same way. So here we are clearly deciding to evacuate that center lane. It's going horribly. There are multiple heroes there. That's really very important in draft. In Constructed, I feel, is doing the abandoning lanes. Now, the Annihilation here is interesting. We have the opportunity to... I don't think that you can do it here, though. You have to get this one down. You have to be able to push this one. Yeah, well, you don't even have the option. The Berserker's Call seals that away. We do have the opportunity to Gust. That doesn't accomplish a ton, but this also then emphasizes maybe the importance of getting something like the Stonehall Cloak, as opposed to the Fountain Flask here, because it would have allowed the Drow Ranger to survive. I mean, if you really want the Kana to survive, it would be better, but look, is it really that important specifically that Kana herself is the one that survives? So, first lane looks like it's in serious trouble. Second lane, there's actually the possibility here to set up a to set up an Annihilation for next turn. Annihilation, by the way, like, this is just, like, it's obviously a really important card. I know I'm not telling you anything new by saying that Annihilation is an important card, but it really needs to get emphasized that this is not a card that is exclusive to the specific kinds of decks, of blue decks. So it's just so generically powerful that, like, in situations like this, like, you are kind of a beatdown mid-rangey deck, ultimately, so you want to be able to actually apply pressure on different lanes. But here, you can just place your Zeus in the middle lane, nuke it, and then go on with your merry way. That doesn't solve the problems, of course, that are going on in that top lane, though, because that's pretty serious. I suppose that there really isn't very much of a way to solve that, though, because your blue hero is coming in at this juncture, and you're going to have to place it into either the middle or the left lane in order to annihilate your opponent out of the game. The play for initiative here is also somewhat important. You want to be able to make sure that you are trying to set up the initiative for going to the top lane if possible. There wasn't the possibility this time, but having initiative in order to pull off something like an Annihilate is particularly important. And your opponent knows that too, because they know that they can try to take you off of any of your key plays. Like, Impact is obviously thinking right now about, like, what about Annihilation? What about Annihilation? This is such an important card in this sort of juncture. This, by the way, this creep spawns perfect. This actually does save that top lane from dying right now, assuming that your opponent doesn't have any removal. That's a little bit of a stretch, obviously. Like, this isn't a likely scenario, that this is just, you find there's a lot of ways for your opponents to battle through this, but at the very least, you can say, like, okay, well, they have to commit some more resources there. This will give me initiative going into that center lane so that I can annihilate there. Or they give me an extra turn and they take that down, which is a problem too. But I guess that means that then you could pass in lane 3, go to lane 1 again, and then go in with either Kana with Kana, and then annihilate it. Now, the problem becomes if they have a play for initiative. We don't have any plays here because we don't have any heroes here. Assault ladders. Well, that's bad. That sets up a kill on the tower. So don't have any choice other than to pass, but it does mean that your opponent has initiative going into that second lane, and if they kill the Zeus, which they probably have the tools to do, given the fact that they played this way. Yeah, okay, so coup de grace. It could have been coup de grace, it could have been duel, but also this, like, emphasizes, I think, the amount of removal that you see in constructed versus in draft. Like, how many times over the course of a whatever it was 6-turn, mana 7 game, how many times did StrifeCro's heroes die? Like 8 or something like this. Like, they died a lot, and that's because your opponent's deck is just packed with removal. So, but also I think that this might be part of the issues with a deck like this, and that why I am not personally excited by a deck like this, because there just seems to be so many different ways to push them out of the lanes to kill their stuff again and again and again, and it just you can't do anything, you can't function as a deck. Like, he had a lot of really lovely cards in hand that just didn't get used by the end of the game. But I think that it's interesting, though. Like, don't get me wrong, I think that his deck has a lot of potential, and it's interesting, and I know that, like, at the very least, this doesn't look like it was one of the best cases for either matchup or the way that the game played out. But I think that it is really neat, and being able to see it pop off would be really cool at another time. But anyway, that'll do it for today. Thank you so much for joining me. Be sure, of course, to like, subscribe, give me all sorts of comments and feedback. I love all of that. Share as well. It makes a huge difference to a newer creator like this, like trying to build the channel and try to build the product. But thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. Take care, everybody.